Hey guys, Super Nerd Miles here, and to my American viewers and any other countries that celebrate this, although I don't know if there are any, Happy Thanksgiving! It is November 22nd, 2012, and I wanted to have some sort of special upload for today, not just like upload another part of Toontown. Although one of those is coming tomorrow. Good news for you guys. So instead, I decided that I would make kind of a long, rambling video on my personal opinions on what I want to happen with the Pokemon series, like where I want it to go from here. I've got. I considered making this more like a top 10 list, or well, technically two top 5 lists. One of them being top 5 things I want to see with like the game itself, like more like the cartridge sense of the game, and a top 5 of the gameplay. But really, when I thought of 10 things that I wanted, there were only 4 for the cartridge. I couldn't think of a fifth. So this is probably just going to be a long rambling just like a long rambling stream of thought narrative, I think it's what you'd kind of call it. So here we go. First, like I said, what I want to happen with like the game itself. First off, more remakes on higher up systems. Um Kanto, if you want to go to Kanto like Fire Red and Leaf Green, like Red, Blue, and Yellow, or if you're Japanese, Green, um you really can't do that because the only Kanto that you can play with a DS or one of the DS or 3DS systems is the higher leveled Kanto that you get to via Johto. So you're kind of just screwed if you want the original Kanto or Hoenn at all because they aren't making remakes fast enough, I guess you could say. Like the latest remake that they made was Black 2 and White 2, which is, I will give them this. It is a very good game. I've already put more than 48 hours on White 2. And it's definitely something that if I could record DS games, which I might be able to in the future, who knows? I might do kind of the same thing that Chugga Conroy has done. Um, White 2 is probably the first Pokemon LP that I'll end up doing. Or, well, maybe Black 2, I don't know which. Um, but they've done some remakes like that, but it's been a really long time since they remade Kanto and Hoenn, and I really wish that there was a DS version of Pokemon Emerald that I could play, something like that. Just like that is, I guess, one of the top things on my list. They start remaking faster because I don't want to go back and dig out one of my older DSs or a GBA itself to play some Pokemon Emerald or some Fire Red or anything like that. I would love to play it on DS. Second, this is kind of along the same lines. I would love it if they would port the older games like heck, like Crystal, like Yellow, maybe like Emerald, onto whatever it's called, DSiWare, 3DSware, something like that, to where you could actually play the retro games on your DS or 3DS, like in their retro form, not remade or anything like that. Okay, maybe remade a little bit, but that would be another cool thing that they could do. And hey, maybe even maybe they could even do it on WiiWare or Wii Uware or whatever. Man, these facts are actually kind of running into each other because the next one is actually, I would love it if they would make Wii U versions of the mainstream games. Like, look at, for the GameCube, Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness. And to some extent, the Wii game, Pokemon Battle Revolution. Those look amazing. And what I've always wondered is, why couldn't they start making the mainstream games like that? Like, give yourself Like they've got in Colosseum, if you transfer your fire red and leaf green team over for the battle modes, you'll be using a 3D sprite for red or whoever you want to call him. So I know that they're and they have the same kind of thing for Brendan and May, I would assume, for Pokemon Emerald or Ruby, Sapphire, or Emerald. So I know that they are most likely capable of doing it. All I want to see is them to actually do that. Like, make it a Wii U game so that you can use all the cool stuff that they use the touchscreen for in the DS games on the Wii U. But, like, give it the same kind of graphics as Colosseum and somewhat same game feel. Just like the feeling of running. Mainly, my main thing about Colosseum that I love so much is the way that not everything is aligned to a grid. The game wasn't created on a specific grid to where you took, like, where you used the D-pad and all that stuff. It was spread out. It was more natural. I would love to see someone remake Pokemon Emerald or anything like that, but instead of on the DS or anything like that, make it on the Wii U. Make it more unique. On the patches of wild grass, for example, have them look slightly more natural and, like I said, not aligned to a grid. If they did that, that would probably be like the most popular Pokemon game they've created thus far. So I would really love to see that. Last on the list of the games themselves is to put in more compatibility between the games. Like when you're looking at it, it comes from the different generations. Generation 3, you could transfer Pokemon between other stuff in Generation 3, provided you had the National Dex and a lot of other stuff at least. You could still trade and battle between, say, Fire Red and Ruby, Leaf Green, Sapphire, either one of them, and Emerald. Anything like that, it was still compatible. And Generation 4, same thing. You could battle Diamond versus Heart Gold, or something like that. But you couldn't battle Emerald versus Pearl, or something like that. You could barely trade between them because it's a one-way trade. You can steal Pokemon out of your PC in Fire Red, Leaf Green, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, and put those into the PAL Park in the Gen 4 games. But you couldn't go between them. It comes from, and the same thing happened when they brought out Black and White. You could trade, like you can trade between Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, but you can't, but you have the same type of thing with the Poke Transfer Lab. You can't just trade back and forth with the Gen 4 games. So if they would keep things in one generation longer before moving on to the next, and like actually have a version of the game from each generation out before they went on to create a new generation, it would be so much cooler because all 5 regions would be more compatible and more accessible to each other. And I think that that's another thing that they really should do. That hopefully someday they will. Maybe a Nintendo rep will someday find this video somewhere. But that's another thing that I've just always wanted. More compatibility. I mean, they concentrate on like the GTS and all that stuff, making everything better for trading between games, but what they haven't considered is that while they're concentrating on the current games out, they're not concentrating on what happens to the various games that they haven't remade for a while. It all comes back to the remakes. And because they don't have anything planned for, because they don't have any way to trade to Generation 3, they're kind of just almost like ignoring it in favor of the current generations. The current games that are out and the next games that they're releasing. And that's just a major complaint of mine. But either way, let's get over to the gameplay mechanics, because these, I have even more to say about these than I do the games themselves, because this is one that I've always thought a lot about. First off, I would like more branching storylines, like the way that Emerald was kind of just a remake of Ruby and Sapphire. Platinum, Crystal, essentially that's it. Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, and Platinum were essentially just remakes of the games that came before them. Black 2 and White 2, I'm sure that people, myself included, criticized the unimaginative naming behind them when they were first announced, but once you started playing the game, you found out that this is a proper sequel. Like, insert Ego Raptor's voice in the Mega Man sequel. This is a proper sequel. This is a proper sequel. And that totally made me ignore any of my original complaints about the game. It just was so much better that I just couldn't believe how much better it was. So, I would like kind of like that. When you compare Black and Black 2 or White and White 2, they've got totally different storylines even if they're set in the same region and have the same basic Pokemon available. And I like that kind of thing. And another thing similar to that, I don't believe that there's actually an American version of the, like, I read the Pokemon Adventures manga comic, and one of the things that I haven't seen yet is the Ruby Sapphire version of it, because I don't think that there's an American version yet. But, from what I've read on the wiki about it, the Ruby Sapphire storyline, the two rivals, Ruby and Sapphire, Brendan and May, whatever you want to call them, have a competition going on. Ruby's goal, I might be getting this mixed up. Ruby's goal is to get all of the contest ribbons, and Sapphire's goal is to get all of the badges before the other completes his or her objective. And I love that idea. I would love it if when they remade one of the games, or whenever Generation 6 comes out, for the two games to not only have slightly different storylines like Groudon versus Kyogre, but to have different objectives than each other, to get the whole feel of the region all together, you would have to get both games, because if you bought one game, your main objective was to train for contests or something like that, and in the other, it's to train for battling. Because I would really love that. Something like that would be really cool. Especially if your rival in each of those games was focused on the other objective, like they are in the Ruby Sapphire chapter of the Adventures manga. It's like, when you think about it, it's just a really cool idea. Next, more evolutions of earlier Pokemon. Like, there are still, like, as each new region comes out, except for Black 2 and White, except for Generation 5, because they wanted to go away from the earlier system, there are a lot of new Pokemon, yes. But a fair chunk of those Pokemon, like, in the Sinnoh games, there were 20 or 30. There are just a fair number of evolutions of earlier released Pokemon, like Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime got Mime Jr. Electabuzz got Elekid in Generation 2 and Electivire in Generation 4. I like that. Things like that are nice. And I'm sure that when people first saw several of the Generation 5 Pokemon, they thought, this is an evolution of blank, like Bouffalant. Bouffalant looks like and plays like a bigger, badder, meaner Tauros. But it wasn't. So I guess that's kind of the main point of this. Things that look like they should be evolutions of other Pokemon, maybe like actually make them evolutions of those other Pokemon in future games, and give more evolutions to some of those Pokemon um, like far-fetched that still don't have pre-evolutions or evolutions get more things at least to 2 evolutions in their line. Once again, a similar point for the next one, more branching evolutions. Like, has anyone out there played the DS game Digimon World DS? Yeah, I know, I'm talking about Pokemon and I'm making a Digimon reference. Digimon isn't honestly that bad. It looks like a poorly disguised Pokemon ripoff, but I'll say that the games, especially Digimon World DS and its sequels Dawn and Dusk, have their plus sides. And one of the things that both infuriated me and excited me at the same time was the evolution routes in that game. Because, like, essentially in Pokemon, at least at the moment, you only see 2 things. A evolves into B, evolves into C, or A evolves into B or C. Or, well, no, A evolves into B, evolves into C or D, I should say. Um, or, in the case of some things like Eevee or Tyrogue, A evolves into B, C, and D. And E and F and G and H and so on and so forth. But Digimon World DS, virtually each Digimon has at least 2 things that it will quote-unquote digivolve into. And I think that that's a really cool idea because that means that if you take one, like if you apply this to Pokemon, you could take one base Pokemon, like for example Eevee, and it has a whole crap ton of evolutions. To where it's not only that currently it has 7 different things, or 7? Is it 7? Yeah, 7 different things that it can evolve into, but each of those has at least 1 or 2 other things that it could evolve into from there. And that's just another of those things that I just think is a really good idea that someone else thought of that Pokemon could copy without any copyright infringement, because it's a basic idea. But if they did that, that would make it a lot cooler to have so many options from the same base Pokemon. Let's see, what's next? Inter-region travel. When Ruby and Sapphire first came out, I got the player's guide. I forget which one. And one of the first things that the player's guide had, like pretty much on the inside cover, was a list of differences from the earlier games. And one of the things that it said most commonly was, you cannot travel to prior regions. Now, Ruby and Sapphire actually introduced me to the Pokemon series. I did not play Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, or Crystal. At least not until after Ruby and Sapphire. So I thought, what's the big deal about that? But now that I've played one of the games, at least one of the games, I should say, from each of the 5 current regions, I really wish that they would do more about that. Because I would love to, after I beat the Hoenn Elite Four, to travel over to Kanto and get a new starter and mostly start my adventure over, but within the same game. So I would love if they could make a game with more than heck, even more than 2 of the regions, to where you could have 3 or 4 of the regions within the same game. And yes, I do know that the cartridges don't have that much memory, yada yada yada. That's more incentive to go to the consoles, to where you have as much memory as you need to do something like that. Like, I can ramble on more about how I want that to work in some other video, because this is one of the features that I've wanted the most, and I've actually thought the most about. I have a whole series of guidelines that could potentially make that work, but that's something for another video. I won't talk more about that. Now, the last 2 that I have for gameplay are similar to the last one that I had for the game itself. More focus on cooperative and competitive play. This is another thing that Digimon did right, in my opinion. There are several they're not main storyline things, but there are several side quests and various things needed to 100% the game that actually require you to link up with other people playing the game to do. And I like that. I would love cooperative. For one thing, cooperative play, I would love for them to expand that. Like, at the moment, the only way that you'll have someone character from another cartridge on into your game is things like Join Avenue, where they open up a shop in your Join Avenue, and the intralink to where they'll do little mini quests that take about half a minute in your world, and then they go back to their own world. But imagine if you could link two games together to where you could bring someone else into your game, like to where you could tag team certain areas, not just like, for example, in Black 2 and White 2. Sorry if this is a minor spoiler to anybody, but there are sections, for example, the Reversal Mountain, that the first time you travel through it, Bianca is traveling with you, and each wild battle is a double battle, and the vast majority of the battles that you'll find inside there, at least on the first time through, are meant to be double battles. And that's a great idea, and I love the idea, and I think that it would be really cool if the areas like that, and maybe even all the areas, you could link two games together via infrared or something like that, to where in areas like that, your tag partner is actually someone else who's doing that point of the game, and you could tag team all the trainers in there. Or even take it beyond that to where you could, in certain modes of the game at least, like the same way that there's an easy mode and a hard mode that you'll unlock after beating the game, give the ability to tag team gyms or the Elite Four together. Because that's another thing that I just think would be the coolest thing ever if they would just focus more on cooperative play instead of pretty much just competitive, trading and battling, etc., etc. Now, the competitive play, there's not much more that they could do there's not much more that they could do that they haven't already done or they're not already working on. But one of the things that I could say about it that is that is a bit of a complaint is when you set messages for what you say to other people before battles, when you win, when you lose, etc., etc., etc. In Generation 3, it was pretty much an all-time low. Like, I think they had just introduced the system, so it was pretty rough. So there were 4 or 5 words that you could say at once. It was all capitalized, and you were limited by a certain dictionary. The highest point, like the best message that I could ever see, that I could ever hope for, was, of course, Chugga Conroy thought, "I am going to enjoy an egg." Which makes no sense and really is funny but stupid at the same time. Whereas on the other hand, in Generation, I don't remember how it was in Generation 4. I don't think I ever did any competitive battling in Generation 4 for some reason. Generation 5, like, there's a place. Well, for one thing, you can set it via your trainer card, and for another thing, I believe there's a person in the battle subway that'll help you do things like that. To where there were a bunch of preset messages, but each had 1 or 2, maybe 3 blanks that you could set certain words into it. And I think that that's a great idea if they had explored it further, like context clues. Because if it says, like, "May blank safely land on me," I saw that message somewhere and I chose victory, but it's the same thing as Generation 3 all over again. It's all capital, so it's like, "May victory safely land on me." It's the same reason that they started making Pokemon names automatically the first letter is capitalized but not the whole word. It leads to better game feel if they don't have names all over the place that are just like random words, etc., 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 that are all capitalized when they shouldn't be. And I think that it would be better if they would let people just set their own messages. Maybe still stick to a certain dictionary so that they can't just you're starting a battle with a random person and they're pretty much each one of the messages that they send you are like them cursing you out or whatever. Because that wouldn't be cool. But still, it would be nice if you didn't have to worry about a list of presets. So that's pretty much my main complaint with competitive play at the moment. Alright, I guess that does it. I've been talking for, this says 25 minutes. Hopefully I've cut some of that out of there. But probably not because I was pretty much talking the entire time. There's your Thanksgiving special. Or just a random update if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving. And like I said, for those of you watching it when it's uploaded tomorrow, I will have another Toontown video out. I promise, guys. It's not going to be another month. And I guess that'll do it. So, there you have it. Random update. Hopefully in the future I will post more videos like this. Go ahead and tell me, leave comments if you have subjects for future rants, top 10s, rambles, whatever. But yeah, that'll do it. Miles out.